Sorry for the late delay. Let's start. Online participants, only one, no? Right. Okay, so if you recap last week's session, so what we have learned, we discussed something related to systems engineering, software engineering. Apart from that, attributes of good system or good software. Then what else? Okay, so today what we are going to do is we will be discussing how to build information systems, right? So what are the approaches and what sort of technical things to be done at information system building, right? So this is going to be your roadmap. So explain how building new system produces organizational change and describe the core activities in the system development process. Describe the principal methodologies for modeling and designing systems. Describe the alternative methods for building information systems. Then approaches for designing new systems. So if we take the requirement of a new system, so why you need information systems in place for an organization? So what is the exact requirement? If you can go back to the example which I have described during last session. So I have a small shop, I have my inventory, and at the same time I have an idea of my sales, my debtors, then the profitability, all those stuff, right? So when gradually you increase your businesses, you improve your number of inventory items, you improve your number of sales outlets, right? In such scenarios, you might have come across with a problem. I mean, with the resources, you might not be able to manage your business, right? So you need to get some sort of assistance from other people, or sometimes you might have to you might have to automate some processes, right? So actually you will be having a problem of inefficient manual processes or legacy systems, right? So what you have to do is you have to either automate the system or else you have to introduce a new system, right? If you take the same example, right? The small shop, right? So if you are increasing your outlets, say you are increasing the number of outlets into 3, right? So what are the possibilities, right? What sort of alternative actions you can take to overcome that problem? If you want to manage that 3 outlets, you have to manage the inventory, right? So what are the products that you are going to sell and at what place you are keeping the stocks, right? Then the prices, right? For each and every product, what is the price? If you are maintaining 3 locations, does it incur transportation cost? Say you have one location at Colombo and the other one at Kandy, right? So when it comes to the Kandy location, your price might be different, right? Because you may have to transport that thing, right? Likewise, inventory, prices, sales and debtors, then your creditors position and all the stuff you have to manage within your organization. So you have options. One is you can hire another person to manually do those things. I mean, to manage your inventory, sales, creditors, debtors, and all those stuff. You can have another guy to manage that thing, right? To keep a record and to manage the thing. Or else you might have another option is you can introduce a system, right? A software or system which can manage your business, right? The other thing is you might have the possibility of outsourcing this thing to another party, right? So you can ask another person or another organization, okay, so I'll be running my business. So on behalf of me, can you just manage the accounting and all the stuff, right? So you have three options. So you have to select the best option suit for your business, right? So you have to think about the scale of your business, right? So whether it is really worth to have a computerized system which will say cost of somewhere around 1 million, or else you can hire a person for about say 15 rupees a month. Altogether per annum you have to pay about 150,000, 150 or less than 200,000, right? So on that case you have to take the decision whether you need to automate this thing using a fully fledged system or software system, or else there might be several other options, right? You might, you should be, you should have the facility to enhance your HR, right? So if it is not that costly, it's better to run with 2 or 3 other guys, right? Rather than automating it using software. So we take large organizations, the problem is inefficient manual process, and sometimes there might be legacy systems which are not that suited for the existing environment. So the solutions are enterprise suite to centralize data and replace legacy software, change to corporate culture and organization. So it demonstrates the use of information systems to streamline and redesign business processes. It illustrates need to address and make changes in culture and organization to support new systems. So we take structural organizational changes enabled by IT. So how does it happen? Say you are running on a manual system or a legacy system, and now you are going to introduce a new system, right? So with the new system, you might be able to automate some sort of processes, right? So there might be instances where you can rationalize some processes or procedures, right? So what do you understand by automate and rationalize? So there are two another points, that is business process redesign and paradigm shift, right? So those are the 4 main changes that you can do with a new system or new software, right? So you can see the risk over the returns, right? So you introduce a new system or software which will automate some of your processes and procedures, right? So that is the least risk procedure, and your return would be law, right? So what do you mean by automation? So what is automation? So can you give me an example? So you might have done this thing earlier, or sometimes you may have using a system which has automated your manual processes, right? So can you give me an example of automation? Sorry? Tea machine, vending machine. Right. So that what you have done is you eliminate the manual processes and automate the thing. Right. When it comes to system, so software, what are the places that you can see automated things? So you have huge information to be loaded into your system, or sometimes you might have several procedures that are not that much of productive, right? So you can eliminate those things by automating the procedure, right? So as an example, if you take the previous example, the shops one, right? So if you can introduce a system where you can keep your inventory records and sales and debtors records in a system, right? So it will eliminate the manual processes of entering invoices and keeping inventory counts, right? So it will be much more faster than doing it manually, right? So basically you automate the thing as it is, right? So you don't change the processes or the procedures existing, right? So that is a phase one. So the rationalization is little bit far ahead. So your risk is high as well as your return is comparatively high. So what is rationalization? So you take that automation and we come to rationalization. So what are the examples, if you can give me? So it's step ahead automation. So rather than automating the existing processes and procedures, you analyze what are your business processes, right? So what are the existing procedures that you are using, and you rationalize it, right? So for an example, if we take say you need to open a bank account, right? Say a couple of decades back, if you want to create a account, right? If you want to open an account, you have to go to the bank, right? So at the bank, you get several forms or applications, right? So you have to fill all the fields and put your signature there, and that should be authorized by manager, the second officer, or so many steps to be fulfilled, right? So nowadays, what happens is you just have a simple registration form, right? So you have to put your name, your ID number, and the signature. That's it, right? So what they have done is they have analyzed the entire process of the procedure, right, and eliminated the unwanted processes or procedures, right? So that is basically the rationalization of processes, right? So what is redesign then? Next step. So you analyze the process or the procedures and you start from the ground zero, right? Suppose you have to register a new customer, right? Or else take an example of say hospital, right? OPD system. So when a patient comes to the OPD, he or she has to register herself or himself, right? So they need to provide name, address, ID numbers, then whatever the information the hospital needs, right? So before that, they have to wait in a queue, and there are there are people who are managing the queue, then there are people who are entering the information, right? Likewise, there are so many intermediate procedures and processes which are really unwanted or non-productive, right? So if you can provide a system where a person or a patient can straight away get registered himself or herself, might be using a kiosk, right? So when he comes to the OPD, he just enter his name and his ID number and just register himself, right? So doesn't need to wait in a queue for hours, right? Then he doesn't need to write those things. So we can eliminate the middle non-productive procedures by redesigning approach. Right. So then what is paradigm shift? So you turn around the existing procedure, right? So you don't think about the existing one. So what you do is you change the entire procedure which you are following. As an example, say earlier people, if you wanted to buy a book, right? Earlier what you have to do was you have to go to a bookstore and search for the book, right? So if it is not available there, either you have to order the book from the particular store or else you have to shift to another store, right? So nowadays what happens? We just go to online stores, say Sarasaviyo, Gunsina, whatever this thing, you search for the book, right? If it is available, you can pay it through your credit card and they will deliver it within 3-4 days, right? So the paradigm shift, the way of doing things have changed drastically, right? Same thing happens when it comes to the e-commerce applications like Kapruka, Amazon, eBay, right? Earlier, if you want to buy something, you go to a department store either or a shop and you buy things, right? So especially for gifts, right? Gifts and flowers. Now what we do? We just go to Kapruka or whatever the site and order it, right? So they'll deliver on behalf of us, right? So that is paradigm shifting in systems. So if you go to the previous slides again, structural organizational changes enabled by IT. So this automation, it will increase your efficiency and replace some manual tasks. So rationalization of procedures, in there you streamline and standard operating procedures. So often found in programs for making continuous quality improvements. So business process redesign, analyze, simplify and redesign business processes. Reorganize workflow, combine steps, eliminate repetitions. So paradigm shifts are rethink nature of business, define new business models, change nature of organization. So last time we described and discussed something related to ERP, right? So if you can remember, so what is an ERP? Enterprise resource planning. Okay, so what does it do? Sorry? Basically, you have one system, one database. So all the modules are camera is not on. Can you see the camera now? You are logging into the LMS, no? No. No, no, can't. It's being recorded, but right. I think now it's okay, no? Done. Right, okay. So we discussed about ERP. So what we do is we integrate all the modules into one system, and we'll be keeping only one database and one system for the entire organization, right? So we don't have any silos of information for different sub-departments or sub-modules. So when it comes to ERPs, so there are advantages in two ways. One is the automation or the rationalization. Apart from that, there are some set of practices, code of practices, or what we call best practices, right? If we take the industry of, say, sales and distribution, right? The vendors who have developed the ERP and implemented it in several places, several in the sense thousands, might be in hundred thousands, right? So they have some standard set of rules or set of procedures, right? If you take sales, the standard way of doing sales is common for most of the industries, right? So if you take the first step of sales might be receiving a sales request, right? So based on that sales request, you might provide a quotation. Once you provide the quotation, they might ask for a discount or whatever this thing, right? So when you have done the negotiation, the customer will raise a PO. When the customer raises the PO, you might raise a sales order where the people at your production floor or your factory can see the sales order and produce accordingly. Once you have done the production, you can deliver or issue goods to the customer. Once the goods are issued, you can update your revenue or sales as well as your debtors. If it is cash, you can settle it off. So likewise, you have standardized set of procedures which are called best practices, right? So when you are implementing that sort of, that nature of ERP, so you will be automatically doing business process management or business process re-engineering as well, right? So what do you mean by business process management? So we discussed that we have some set of procedures and processes. So you have to identify what are the processes and procedures that you are practicing, and you have to optimize those things to get the maximum benefit, right? So there are tools for business process management. So variety of tools and methodologies to analyze, design and optimize processes. So used by firms to manage business process redesign. So steps in business process management. So what you have to do is you have to identify processes which need to be changed, right? So you have to analyze the existing process, and if there's any lapse, you have to redesign it, implement the new process, and you have to continuously do the same thing, right? So are both business process management and ERP are same? No. If you implement an ERP, right? So you will be, you have to adhere to some sort of redesigned or standardized business processes, right? So that is business process management. So you can straight away implement an ERP without changing your processes, but it's not recommended. What you have to do is you have to redesign or realign your business processes and procedures. So ERP and BMP are two different things. ERP is the holistic view, and BMP is one part of ERP. One benefit of implementing ERP. So if you take the example of purchasing a book. So you have customers and clerks get involved in this operation, right? So if you take the process flow, customer goes to the bookstore and searches for the book. If the book is available, what you can do is purchase the book, take book home, right? If the book is not available, what you have to do is you have to check that thing with the clerk, right? Clerk searches the thing. If he can found that thing, you can purchase the book and take it home. Or else what you have to do is you can ask the clerk to order the book, right? So the clerk inquire about the ordering. If he can, if it is able to order the book, he will order it, then place the order. Once the order is placed and book is delivered to the bookstore, the clerk will notify the user or the customer, right? Customer returns to the store and purchase the book, take book home, right? So if you take, there are so many non-productive procedures and processes are engaged in this thing, right? So when it comes to the online bookstore, the customer can access online bookstore. He can search for the online catalog. If the book is available, he can straight away place the order and book will be delivered by mail. If the book is not available, he can search for another store, right? So you can save your time. When it comes to the customer, he can save his time. At the same time, when it comes to the store, the bookstore, so he can reduce his physical stores, right? So it might be very expensive, right? So if you have to keep a large bookstore, you need some space, you need electricity, you need AC, your storage capacity, the storing expenses might be high, right? So you can reduce the cost of a book if you go for the online stores, right? So you don't need to maintain such facilities. So the benefit might be gone for the customer as well as for the bookstore, right? So various business process management tools used to identify and document existing processes, right? So what you have to do is you have to identify the existing process and document it. Create models of improved processes. Capture and enforce business rules for performing automating processes. Integrate existing systems to support process improvements. Verify that the new processes have improved and measure impact of process change on key business performance indicators. Right. So next we'll move into systems development. Right. So once you have identified there is a problem, there might be several set of problems, right? So you need to address. Then you decide to go ahead with the system, right? So before going into a system, you need to think about the feasibility, right? You have to do something called a feasibility study, right? whether the solution is feasible in financial terms, in your operational terms, and whether it's technically feasible, right? So whether you have enough expertise on the particular area, right? So you need to fulfill the feasibility requirements. So once you have gone through that thing, you come to systems development, right? So system development is activities that go into producing an information system solution to an organizational problem or opportunity. So with the systems development, we have phases: system analysis, system design, programming, testing, conversion and maintenance, production and maintenance, right? So this system development process, you start with system analysis, system design, programming, testing, conversion and implementation. So this is a structured way of doing things, right? So we call this structured system development methodology, right? So that is, you need to complete the first phase before starting the second one, right? So if you take overview of systems development, you have system analysis. So analysis of problem to be solved by new system. So you define the problem and identifying the causes. So you specify the solutions. Systems proposal report identifies and examines alternative solutions. So this includes feasibility study, whether the solution is feasible and is it a good investment, right? So you have to think about the return on investment, whether it is required technologically high skills, right? So apart from that, you need to establish information requirements, where who needs what information, where, when and how. Define objectives of new or modified systems. Detail the functions new systems must perform. So if you fail to identify the requirements at the initial stage correctly, so this might be ending up with a very high development cost, right? So at the initial stage, you need to identify the exact requirement, what, when, and how does this to be delivered. So when it comes to system design, it describes the system specification that will deliver functions identified during system analysis. So that should address all managerial, organizational and technological components of system solutions. So there are a set of rules of end users. So the first rule is user information requirements drive system building. Who are the users involved with the systems? Who are the end users of a system? You are going to introduce a new system to your organization, right? So who are the end users? Employees, who else? So basically, who are the stakeholders of your business, right? So there might be employees, there might be customers, there might be your capital investors, there might be banks, and there might be end users like government and other organizations like Inland Revenue, Divisional Secretariat, etc. What else? Who else? Your suppliers, your creditors, right? Okay, so there are a set of end users. So you have to take participation of all of the required stakeholders or end users, right? So when you develop a system or design a system, the end user requirements are vital, right? So you have to make sure that at least one representative from each stakeholder group is within your core team. So nowadays the practice is, earlier, if you take, say, if you want to develop or design a new system, say for accounting or finance, right? So earlier what the practice was, systems engineers or software engineers get the requirement, and based on those requirements, they just develop the system, right, and implement on customer place, right? So there were some miscommunications and there were some gaps, right? So now to eliminate those things, what we do is we prepare a team called core team, right? So this is the best practice for implementing or designing new systems, right? So what we do is we take a set of technical people, right? At the same time, we get people from business who are domain experts, right? Who knows about the domain or the business, right? So got the point. So there are technical people as well as domain expertise of end users from the business, right? So we prepare the core team inclusive of end users as well as technical users, right? So they'll be working on a team, and they are the one who drives the entire designing and the implementation, right? So this is the practice nowadays. And the other thing is users must have sufficient control over design process to ensure system reflects their business priorities and information needs, right? So people who are engaging with the business knows the business well, right? So they are the ones who know the business. So they are the ones who know what is required, exactly knows what is required and at what time they need it, right? So you have to get those information and address that requirements. Then insufficient user involvement in design effort may be a major cause of system failure. So when the end users are not getting involved in the design process phase, what happens is you will be ending up with a product which might not be able to use with the requirements of the end user, right? So apparently what happened is the system might be failure, not in use. That should not be able to use. So this is basically design specifications which you can use this for your just reference. So now we have gone through analysis, design, and next one is programming or development. So system specifications from design stage are translated into software program code. Right. So you convert your specifications into executable programs. Then we will be coming to the phase testing. So ensure system produces right results. Unit testing. So when it comes to testing, we have three main testing procedures: unit testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. So what is unit testing? Sorry? Yeah, actually it's not only the developer. So basically what you do is you take one component and test it, right? So earlier what we did was we test it within the developer's premises, right? So now what we do is we develop the component and test it, right? So for the testing we get the involvement of the core team, as I mentioned you earlier. The core team have two different HR personnel, right? So one is from the technical side and the other one is from domain expertise, that is from the business, right? So the core team is going to test this thing. So that is basically the component, right? Say you develop a system for sales and data management system, right? So you can develop it in components, right? So when it comes to sales and development distribution, you might have a small component for tax calculation, right? So you develop the component for tax calculation, right? So that can be tested within that development team as well as with the end users, right? The domain experts. So that is component testing. Then we come to system testing. So there what we do is, rather than testing components individually, we integrate all those components and test the entire thing as a system, right? So the major difference here was, I mean, at the previous era, what we did was component testing we did with the developers. System testing we get involved the entire domain users as well, I mean the developer plus the end user, right? So here also we are testing with the core team, where you get technical people as well as the domain experts, right? So this is, we are testing the system as a whole. And next model is acceptance testing. So this is basically, at the initial stage you have something called requirement specification, right? So with the requirement specification you specify the solution or the system should have these functionalities, right? So acceptance test is you or the business sign on behalf of the company confirming that the product is up to the requirement specification, right? So acceptance testing is done by the who? user. In the test plan, all preparations for series of tests. I mean, at the initial stage, you will be preparing test cases for component testing, system testing, and acceptance testing, right? Right. Then conversion. So process of changing from old system to new system. So before that, up to this point, have you got any clarifications or problems? Or do you understand these things, at least I mean the key terms? So basically what we have done is, we have discussed the system development life cycle in terms of software engineering, right? So if I change the slide, so when we discuss this thing with in terms of software engineering terms and notations, so software process is a structured set of activities required to develop a software system, right? So many different software processes, but all involve specification, design and implementation, validation, evolution, and testing and maintenance, right? So we describe basically the waterfall model, right? Yeah, you get your requirements. Based on your requirements, you do the design and do your implementation, integration and system testing, operation and maintenance, right? Right. So once you have done the designing, analysis, design, and developing the thing, then what you have to do is you have to implement the new system, right? So when you introduce the new system or when you do the conversion, you have four main strategies to convert the system, right? So you might be having a manual system or might be having a legacy system. So there you have four main strategies for conversion. So first one is parallel strategy, next one is direct cutover, pilot study and phased approach. So we'll take a 10-minute break and start with the strategies, right?